Pistonhead flat tyre lager.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. On my travels today, I picked up some of this stuff from, it is actually called Brewing, and they're from Sweden, but they go, or their range of beers goes under the name of Pistonhead, and I saw two of their beers in a pack for sale. If you look at my other review of the Haze Lager, that will give you an idea of what the pack looks like. They were selling them in Lidl's for $5.98. It contains a small glass, which I've used for the other review. That's in the wash now. There's a can of this stuff, flat tyre, and there's also the Haze Lager in there as well. That costs £5.98. You can argue the point of whether that's expensive or not. As I said in the other video, I don't mind some of the Pistonhead stuff. I first discovered that shortly after it came out. They originate from Sweden and they have been around since 2011. I used to drink in a bar in London, a rock pub in London, and they got a load of their stuff in I think it must have been shortly after. It must have been about 2012 or 2013. And I tried some of the lager. I thought it was okay. I've since tried a few more of those beers. The Full Amber is one that stands out for me. If you ever get a chance to try that, that is a bottom fermented lager with some American hops in, and it doesn't taste bad at all. I was quite impressed. American and German hops, I should say. That was pretty good. I like the artwork of this brewery. They have the candy skulls or sugar skulls, whatever you want to call them, on there. They really go in for the custom hot rod type, rock and roll type image, which again I really like. But they also sponsor some initiatives to try and recreate live music venues in the UK. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're into live music like I am, you'll know that the live music venues have been closing down at a rate of knots for the past, I would say, 20 years. Certainly in London, some of the best music venues have closed down. And to be honest, I was having this conversation just today with a mate, and we were going through how many decent venues had closed down in London. And I'm London born and bred. I make no bones about it. I am a Londoner. Even though I live in Kent now, I will always be a Londoner. But at the moment, there is very, very little to entice me to ever go back there again to live. Certainly music-wise, music is a massive part of my life, and live music is a massive part of my life, both playing and watching, and the venues just aren't there anymore. You get quite a few around Camden Town, which is good, but you used to have local music venues, and well, it's not just music venues, it's pubs as well. But the point of this is that Brewing have got a UK initiative to try and get music venues back up and running again, which I think is brilliant. So I'm here to review beers, but that on its own merits is a really good thing, in my opinion, to get behind. And they donate and they try and help out music venues, which I think is brilliant. So more power to them for that. But we're not here for that, we're here for the beer. So let's investigate this beer. Okay, it is a lager. It is brewed with mosaic hops, which I'm just reading this here on the can. I'm just going to go by what's on the can. I have to say I've done very little research. Been really busy today with work and all that. I've done very little research on these, so I am sort of half winging it when it comes to the background on all this lot. But I'll just go by what's on the can. So It's a 330ml can, as they say. It's 4.8%. It's brewed with mosaic hops, and that's all that information is on the front. Mosaic hops, of course, very good hops indeed for IPAs, pale ales, etc. Adnams do one that just contains mosaic, and it is a really nice pale ale in my opinion. Very fruity. What else we got on here? Yeah, it's got the ingredients: water, malt, hops, and barley. It's dry hopped as well. If you don't know what dry hopping is, it's basically you're adding hops in at the very end of the boil, usually whole leaf hops, but you can add other hops in as well, and that just gives it a more of a hoppy flavour because you're not boiling the hops. Now don't get me wrong, you put hops in the boil as well, and there's magnum hops in here as well, which are used for the bittering. There is also this centennial hops. They are renowned for their fruitiness, used a hell of a lot in American beers, American IPAs, American pale ales. So this is a lager with an American New World style twist on it, same as what the other stuff was, the hazy lager. And they do seem to do this, just put American hops in there, although the full amber does contain some German hops as well. Excuse me. The malts that are in this, you've got Pilsner malt and Munich malt. Two fantastic malts. Pilsner malt is the base malt, really good malt for brewing lager with, as the name suggests, and Munich malt as well, very nice indeed. And it has light caramel in there as well, which is really good. So it's, on paper, it does talk a pretty good fight. So let's get this open and let's see if it backs it all up. The EBUs on this are 26, which is in keeping with a lager, so no alarm bells there. So let's get this open. Let's get it into the glass. And that's a clear lager, looks like it's been filtered. That's a dirty glass. Well, it is on this side anyway. I don't know what the fuck's happening here. Yeah. We're getting on the nose. Oh yeah, you can definitely get them hops straight away. The Centennial hops. And the Magnum hops as well, you're getting some bitter aromas coming through there as well. It's not as fragrant as the hazy lager, which was unfiltered. This is this is a bit more fruity. And it's grapefruit and lime are the two big ones. There's also, if I'm not mistaken, there's also a little bit of passion fruit and mango on there too. Which, I know they're putting their twist on a lager, but to me, at least they haven't called it Helles, you know, or a Pilsner. I know they've called it a lager. Lager's such a generic term now, but if you call your beer Helles and Pilsner, and you put American style or New World style hops in there, as far as I'm concerned, you can just fuck off. It's just, I just don't get it. Just call your beer something else. Just don't call it the originator's name. I know, yeah, it's me, it's my opinion, I know, but that's just how strongly I feel about that. Anyway, let's stop gassing. There it is in the glass. One and a half finger, I'd say. Yeah, about 1.5 finger whitehead, foamy whitehead. Fair amounts of carbonation on that. Very slight haze on that. I said it was clear. There is a very, very slight haze on that. Looks reasonably good. Smells okay. Let's get it down the hatch. Bottoms up. Yeah, and that's the two crossovers of the old world and the new world. The malts on the finish are the old world. Very Germanic tasting, sweet malt on that. Nice bread and doughy type flavours that you would expect from German beer. But on the palate, you've got them American hop style flavours of grapefruit, mango, passion fruit. They're the three big flavours that sort of stand out on it. But it's nice, the sweetness from the malt does balance it out. And I'm sure there's some sweetness on that yeast as well. It's almost like a honey style taste to it, which balances it out. It balances the bitterness out of the Magnum hop and the grapefruit. And it leaves you with a nice balance and a nice finish on it as well. And it's not bad. I was, looking at the ingredients, I was in the mind, I've got it in my mind. This is my judgmental mind saying, well, this isn't going to be much different from the hazy lager that I've just tried. But it is. And what makes it different for me is the finish. The finish is quite nice. It's got a very nice German style finish to it. In the palate though, or on the palate I should say, it's more leaning towards an American style of pale ale. Yeah, American style pale ale is how I describe it. But them notes are toned down. They're not as big as they are in some of the American pale ales. If you can imagine a toned down American pale ale, very toned down, hop wise on the palate, but the finish, you don't get much of the fruit from the hops. As I say, the citrus, the stone fruit. You don't get that on the finish. And it's quite nice. And what I like about it, as I say, there's none of that grapefruit, that bitter lime grapefruit style flavour that you get on IPAs and pale ales. You're not getting that on here. And I have to say, all in all, that is not bad. The caramel malts that they're talking about, or light caramel malt, I'm not really getting any caramel malt on there at all. In fact, now this is slightly warmed up, it's reminded me of a British blonde ale with that citrusy flavour, the biscuit malt that's on there, or the bready doughy style malt I should say, rather than biscuit, because it's bordering on biscuit malt, but it's more of the bread and sort of doughy type malt. But it does remind me slightly of a decent British blonde ale. And it's not bad. No complaints, no alarm bells. Not bad at all. What's the verdict on Flat Tire or Pistonhead, Brutal Brewing, whatever you want to call it? What is the verdict? Not bad, I have to say. All things considered, it isn't bad. Now, if you take the glass as costing £2 that was in the pack, if you take this as costing £2 and the other beer costing £2 for $5.98, well, you can argue the fractions, but it's roughly £2. That's not too bad value for money. This would probably cost a lot more on its own, and that's the only reason I bought it, because if I was going to review it, you could probably put another £1, maybe £1.50 on it as well, depending who you buy it off. Certainly in a pub, you'd pay a lot more for it, but for £2, you won't go wrong. Now, I said this on the Haze Lager, it wouldn't be my go-to, and it wouldn't certainly. I don't think I'd buy it again. It's for the simple fact, as I say, I'd have to pay more money for it. Now, if they started doing this in Lidl's regularly, I don't know, I've never seen it in there before. I'm quite surprised that I saw that in there. Probably, it might have something to do with Christmas. But it's not bad. And if I saw it for that price again, in the pack with a glass and everything, yeah, I'd probably buy it again. It's not too bad. I'm going to give it the same as what I gave the Haze Lager. I'm going to give that a 7.5 out of 10. I'll recommend it, and I'll recommend it if you like British. I know this is a bottom fermented lager, but if you like British blonde or golden ale, you might like that because it's got a little bit of the citrus that you get in some of them newer style British blonde ales and golden ales. But it's very drinkable, definitely very drinkable. Out of the fridge on a hot summer's day, that would be very, very refreshing. And yeah, it's just okay. The reason I knocked the marks off is because I know I'd have to pay a lot more if I was going to buy it purposefully, and the American hops in it, to be honest, even though that tastes okay, if I'm going to be drinking a lager, I really don't want American hops in it because it just changes the personality of the lager, in my opinion anyway, you know. And I'm glad they haven't called it a Helles, as I say, I'm glad they haven't called it a Helles or a Pilsner and done what Cloudwater have done and just thrown a load of American hops in it and stolen the German name and all that. But yeah, that's just me being pedantic as usual. But yeah, I think 7.5 out of 10 is a fair mark for that. I recommend it if you can get it cheap. I wouldn't be inclined to pay more than £3 for it, certainly. Well, no, I definitely wouldn't. And if you can get it for £2 in Lidl's, fucking fill your boots. And remember, beer is working class champagne.